Yeah, but people think only failure can distract them. Even success can.
Yeah,
If you are met at a
yeah,
level that you longed for so long, and now that you've done it, why would you again put yourself
yeah,
through a game? And we have seen some athletes who could not, care about
yeah.
results after reaching a certain level of success. So many times we have this emotional tsunami that we carry, and we believe our job is to shut the tsunami. But then you have to know immediately after the game, after the situation is over, you are holding the tsunami inside. If you do not let the tsunami
Mm,
pass, the tsunami stays for years.
yeah.
Okay,
In
if she
this case,
did
it was revenge. Nobody doubted it.
but that's my point. If she did it from revenge, if she did it from fear, if she did it from embarrassment, then all that running and all that winning is layered with vengeance.
It was Wimbledon final of 2019, the tail end of Roger Federer's career. His one last chance at the title. Center court was packed with 14,000 people, and almost every single one of them wanted Federer to win. The crowd was chanting his name. Across the net stood Novak Djokovic, 2 points from losing, the air belonging entirely to someone else. And somewhere inside that noise, that pressure, that moment, Djokovic made a decision. After he won the match and the Grand Slam title, he revealed what had happened inside his mind. He said, I've trained to hear Novak when the crowd is chanting Roger. It sounds silly, but it is like that. This is what a trained mind looks like. A mind that has been deliberately, intentionally built to grow, not around difficulty, but through it. To find fuel in the very thing that was meant to break it. And that is exactly what today's conversation is about. My guest is Aditi Surana, high performance leadership coach, behavioral analyst, TEDx speaker, Business World 40 Under 40 awardee, and global LinkedIn top voice. She has spent 23 years building high performance in CXOs, entrepreneurs, artists, and athletes competing at Olympic level. She's also an actor, performer, and writer, a woman of many, many skills. As a friend, I have simply learned to keep up with the pace of her mind and happily drown in her energy. In today's conversation, we use sport as our lens because sport is the greatest metaphor for life. And we explore the tools that matter at every crossroad, every moment life demands you grow. Whether you're mid career, mid season, or mid crisis, this one's for you. You are with me, Shruti, on the Curious Human Project, a podcast about sport, health, habits, and the hustle to stay human. Listen in, make notes. Welcome to the show, Aditi.
Hi! Oh my god, when you're talking
Hello.
about the match, I had goosebumps. I'm like, oh my god, that's true, that's true.
I'm glad you find it true because today we are going to get deep into it. Look, I was reading a little bit about growth mindsets, right? And I was reading about Carol Dweck's work. And there have been a couple of research papers, which have now linked her work to building competitive motivation.
Yes.
So, actively looking at linking her work with sports in a sense. And that gave me this idea that I should be talking to you because you've studied her work so much. And so, let's get started.
Yes.
Okay. To begin with, I'm curious about something.
Yes.
Can a growth mindset exist without desire? Or is it simply fundamental to survival, the human need to keep evolving?
What a wonderful question to start with. Now, when we talk about growth mindset, is it linked to desire? Yes, it is, but not always desire of a particular result. Sometimes the
Hmm.
desire could be simply to give my best possible shot in the moment, to recover from the blow that I had just now, to look at all the possible ways and train my mind to say the same thing, do the same thing
Hmm.
in multiple different ways. And I think when
Hmm.
you are that resourceful, you say stay so committed to action, that the outcome becomes immaterial. So is it a desire? Yes, but what we understand desire is outcome based, result oriented thing. You require result
Yeah.
to keep it like a kind of a goal that you want to go to, but
Yeah.
have to come to the point where you become indifferent to the result while you're taking
Hmm.
action. So I love to call it like 100% present with what you're doing and completely
Hmm.
involved in the moment. And
Hmm.
whenever you do that, that moment or that experience becomes magical for all of us. And it's almost like
Hmm.
what you just described. It's like a flow state where you are slightly beyond yourself, but you're still in control of the situation and the skill that you are demanding in the moment. But you're also beyond
Hmm.
yourself. It's like you're like dancing on the edge. If we get to live those
Hmm.
moments, we all know we kind of talk about it unendingly, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Also,
whole
I'm
mindset is about like that resourcefulness that you have in your mind before you act.
right. And also important for survival, right? Because I can't be what I was 5 years ago to live the life I have today.
I would like to explore survival as an idea because
Hmm.
survival, if you are basically struggling to survive, that, like I would look at it from a mindset or rather mental space. Like a survival would sound like getting by, everyday life, everyday
Hmm.
pressure. But we are talking about thriving. And thriving
Yeah.
requires you to not only survive, like you do that anyway, but now I want to master something. I want to have
Hmm.
ease with something that otherwise most people don't even consider to build.
Hmm.
Like great
Yeah.
orators would like sit and work on particular words, or like great
Hmm.
athletes would like, okay, that moment where I begin the action, that time where my calm
Hmm.
is. All of these are not survival skills. All of these are
Yes.
innate thriving skills and observations that I feel all of us require if we are
Yeah.
for high performance. So yes, is it survival? I think the definition of survival changes. If you're a professional athlete, for you survival is excellence. If you are not and you're just getting started, survival is not dying on the field. So it depends on where you are.
Yeah.
But I believe it's like a
Yeah.
thriving thing for a high performer.
Yeah, absolutely. And I asked that question because, today we're going to talk about sport. And, sport can't exist without the desire to win, in a sense, because it thrives on the fact that you're trying to prove a physical ability, or let's say in a game like chess, your mental ability. And like you just mentioned, not ability, but the thriving potential in your mind, in your body, you're exploring that. And that's why I was so curious to ask you about that, because if I am a sportsman, even if I am about to play an opponent who's much better than me by numbers, by rank, etc., with what confidence do I go onto the court, right? I have to believe that I've put in some sort of work. I have something within me that allows me to be on the same court as this player, and hence I am ready to play this player, you
Yes,
know?
but I would like to quote Federer here, just to clarify. In his commencement speech, he said, I must have lost almost 50% of the shots that I was supposed to take. And then he goes on
Yeah,
saying that when I have a brilliant shot, within moments I have to neutralize the celebration, come to a point where
yeah,
I'm ready for the next shot. And if I've had the worst
yeah,
shot of my life, within moments I have to neutralize that emotion and come to the readiness to go for the next shot. So yes, the result
yeah,
matters, but I also feel you can be result focused, but you have to be process oriented.
yeah, yeah.
Process is
And it
everything.
allows you to be grounded, right?
Yeah, so that coming back to neutral cannot happen without emotional regulation. And who can do that? After the best shot ever possible, you want to like go and celebrate and indulge and do all of it, but you're like, no, back to the game, back to the game, back to the game.
Yeah,
That is not only the physical action, it's the emotional regulation, which I think most of the
yeah,
time people in real life, not only in sports, cannot do. Now it is understandable.
that's
They're
right.
like, yeah, 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 happiness is great. Okay, okay. Yeah, but people think only failure can distract them. Even success can.
Yeah,
If you are met at a
yeah,
level that you longed for so long, and now that you've done it, why would you again put yourself
yeah,
through a game? And we have seen some athletes who could not. care about
Yeah.
results after reaching a certain level of success. They're like, yeah, okay, I got it.
Yeah.
I was like one of the best ones. Why do I have to put myself through? Subconsciously, you stop striving if your mind is
Yes.
not trained.
Yeah, and we are going to get more into it as we go on. I wanted to start by giving you a bit of a situation that happened in the last Wimbledon, and I wanted to get your opinion on how would you have advised this athlete. Okay, so what happened is in the last year's Wimbledon women's final, an athlete called Amanda Anisimova played the world number two Iga Swiatek. Okay, and Amanda lost to Iga 6-0, 6-0. Okay, it's the best of three. She lost in a Wimbledon final, okay, in front of dignitaries and a full, stadium. And for any athlete, losing 6-0, 6-0
It's embarrassing.
is anyway humiliating. Plus, it was a Wimbledon final. And to top it all, there's only two times in the history of the sport that in a final a player has lost 6-0, 6-0. Okay. And it's now basically her loss has gone down in history. Okay. And I can tell you what happened in tournaments after that. But my question was if Amanda came to you after that,
Okay.
yeah, what would you have said to her first? What would you have, advised her?
Okay, what would I have said to her first is like, how are you feeling? So many times we have this emotional tsunami that we carry, and we believe our job is to shut the tsunami. Like in the moment when you're playing the game or when you're dealing with a situation, all of us do this. When we are in a conflict, we just like, okay, 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 let me just not focus on it, but let me focus on the task at hand, the problem at hand, conflict at hand, blah, blah. But then you have to know immediately after the game, after the situation is over, you are holding the tsunami inside. If you do not let the tsunami
Hmm.
pass, the tsunami stays for years.
Hmm.
And that is what people do not do. They do not let the tsunami pass. You have to have a process, you have
Hmm.
to have a technique, whatever works for you. For some people, talking it out
Hmm.
works. For some people, writing it out works. Nowadays, I have also heard that people, I haven't never done it, but people just like do voice recording of their own emotions, of what
Hmm.
they're feeling. Sometimes they keep it, sometimes they delete it, whatever works. But
Hmm.
you got to find a way to get that tsunami out. And if you do not have
Hmm.
somebody to do that as a professional athlete or as a high performer, please find somebody with whom you can do it. It could be a therapist, it
Hmm.
could be a friend, it could be a technique like journaling, it could be any method that
Hmm.
works for you, but you got to address the tsunami. Okay, because what
Hmm.
happens in tsunami, I use that as an analogy because everything is moving at a pace that is uncontrollable and you don't know what to do with it, and all the emotions look real when they're not. They just create this illusion that
Yeah.
everything that I'm feeling is real. And mostly, unfortunately, people make decisions when the tsunami is on. You don't make any decisions when the tsunamis are on. You let the tsunami pass.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah, sometimes it takes
Hmm.
probably a day, a month, you know, and if you're under, like, it's very funny. I do this technique called dump journaling. You literally dump your
Hmm.
emotions in a journal, but that technique is a 12-minute technique. It's on a timer, and people are like, how can you
Hmm.
emote on timer? I'm like, give it a try, you'll know what I'm talking about. Simple technique, take any
Hmm.
notebook, anything, and you just write first question, only question you write. You think about one situation. In her case, is that failure that she's a kind of digesting, and it's a
Hmm.
public failure. It's like, the world gonna talk about
Hmm.
what she does afterward, what she did before. Everything is flashing in her mind. In that moment, dumb journaling is like, what is overwhelming me right now? And then you set a timer,
Hmm.
4 minutes. Okay, first 3 minutes you write
Hmm.
non-stop. And after the third minute alarm goes off, you stop
Hmm.
writing and you observe your breath for 1 minute. And that 1 minute is very slow.
Ah.
It doesn't pass. You want to write it again. You can't, you just stop it. Then you ask yourself this question
Hmm.
after 1 minute. What is overwhelming
Hmm.
me now about the same situation? And now you write for 3 minutes,
Hmm.
and then you stop for 1 minute. And then you do
Hmm.
the same thing about the same situation. What is overwhelming me right now? And then you write about it,
Hmm.
and then when you create like this tap of emotions, and then you pause and you break your pattern, and then you again create a tap and then you break your pattern. Now you have to
Hmm.
pattern to break the pattern. It's very important. Like the technique is based on many mental, emotional principles of neuroscience. But when you do the simple technique like that, 12 minutes on the clock, and if she's going through something so severe, I might ask her to do it for 7 days, 10 days, so that the shame
Hmm.
finds a space to be. Shame is
Yeah.
embarrassment is such an important and powerful emotional journey that if you don't address it,
Right.
people have lost their career to shame and embarrassment.
Exactly. And what you said is so important that when you are in this situation, when the feeling has not passed, don't try and make a decision in that moment. Don't
Yeah.
try and think about what's next, you know,
Yeah.
because that's going to be worse than what has just happened.
And mostly because your mind, let's look at it, your mind is operating at 20% capacity. All emotions are making everything real, people's looks and the micro things, and
Hmm.
we are feeling, she's feeling, must be feeling so vulnerable in the moment, and she's feeling broken and all of it. Now, if
Hmm.
he has gone through any training of high performance mindset, what it does is also prepare you a bit to deal with failure.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
I always tell people when you are going through training, like coaching of high performance mindset, I speak about this model called growth mode on, and it has four
Hmm.
parts, Shruti. First one, it starts with acceptance. Okay, I'm just going to
Hmm.
tell you. First is acceptance. Second, you become curious about what are the possible solutions that you can have. Third is action.
Hmm.
And fourth is
Hmm.
resilience. It's like a spiral
Hmm.
again and again. You run it over and over again. After you first accept, okay, this is where I'm at. Oh my God, this is broken. Oh my God, accept. So you have to be trained how to accept what has happened as soon as possible.
Hmm.
Okay, I'll give you the smallest example. Now, if you have a house help and she breaks a cup, an expensive cup,
Hmm.
and you just realize that the expensive cup is broken. Now you go through, oh, but that was a favorite one my best friend had given me. Oh my God, this is like so precious. Oh my God, I got it from like Prague, and all of that could happen in your mind. Now, the very moment you reach with all of this to a point of acceptance, but abhi toot gaya na. Now it is broken.
Hmm.
What can we do about it? I can't go back and do any. So then, the very moment you have acceptance, you can probably have curiosity. Like, how do I address it now? Did she do it carelessly? Did she do it because she was genuinely something slipped out of her hand? What happened? So the curiosity can only happen after acceptance. If you haven't accepted, then you are still in that
Hmm.
point of like, but it shouldn't have happened. The very moment you accept, there's a possibility of being curious about what can you do about it, and then you act on what you think you
Hmm.
could do, and then you realize I got to be
Hmm.
resilient about certain things. I'm talking about like a sports thing, but that acceptance part, that it is broken now, it is gone now, the situation, like I'm fired already, or I failed at this game, or my marriage is broken, whatever, that acceptance point is a tough one. And the
Yeah.
very moment you accept that this has happened, not accept this as your reality, I will never say that, but accept that this has happened, you probably have a choice to make a different choice. But if you haven't accepted it, there is
Hmm.
no choice. You're only in the story and
Hmm.
the narrative that goes back over and over again, justifying what should have happened and what shouldn't have happened, what should have happened and what shouldn't have happened. But that is past.
Yeah.
Okay, so that
Yeah.
moment of acceptance, if she comes to me immediately after that, I would only like talk about how does she feel and work on the acceptance, because that's the biggest, toughest bit. Because the mind would go, I should do this, I should have done this, I should do this, I should have done this. I'm like, not now, not now, not now. You are in ICU, you're just trauma struck.
Yeah.
You got to come to a point where in the ICU you can imagine, fantasize about running, but you physically can't run. So you have to
Yeah.
come to a point where you start walking slowly, and now you start walking a little fast. Now we can think about running. So that emotional
Hmm.
recovery, most people discount because emotions are invisible.
Yeah. So important. And just to recap what you said, one is employ first the dump technique, the 12-minute dump that you mentioned.
Number
And then if you could repeat for me the four steps that come
you
after,
can,
the three more that come after acceptance.
I'll come back to it over and over again because that is how you switch on the growth mode. Like my
Hmm.
research on Carol Dweck's work of growth mindset was like I found this, like growth mindset always does not help. I do not want,
Mm.
like, growth mindset is a lot about invention and creating curious methodologies. But I do not want my pilot to be inventing something when he is,
Mm.
you know, he's in the cockpit. I do not want my
Mm.
surgeon to like come up with like alternate method. I want him to do what is the procedure, whatever is given, like follow the SOP. Just be
Yeah.
fixed about what you're supposed to do. Don't invent because my life is at stake. So we require growth mode. We got to switch on the growth mode for some time, and then we got to come out and look at how does it work for me. But growth on a
Mm.
queue, growth mindset on a queue, growth mode on a queue is something that people don't understand. So I always tell
Mm.
people we want to train our minds to get in and get out. And
Mm.
I actually learned that while coaching athletes. Because
Mm.
everybody, every athlete I have ever coached, they get into a game mode. They get into like a play mode. Like they're like behaving, doing
Yeah.
whatever, whatever. Now they're like on game mode,
I
suddenly become very, very
identify.
competitive, and suddenly they have like this another ability and almost another personality. And initially, I'm like, oh, what just happened here? I've seen that with singers and performers. They're like talking to you normally, and they suddenly go on the stage and they're different people. I'm like, what
Yeah.
just happened? I was talking to you backstage. Who is this person? Then
Yeah.
I realize they switch on a mode, and we all do.
Yeah.
We all do vacation mode, we all do presentation mode, we all do social
Correct.
mode, party mode, all of that we do. Why don't we
Correct.
switch on to growth mode? Like your
Mm.
AC remote has different modes depending on your requirement, you get into it, right? Like you switch it, you switch it on and you switch it off. So that
Mm.
was my research. I felt we should have so much of training that I want to be in the space of switching on the growth mode. And I also have a physical action. I speak about it on social media all the time, but this is like a simple technique where I would ask people to stand. And for people who are listening to it, I'm just giving instructions so that you can do it if you're not driving. Okay, only then. But you can do it whenever you get a moment, like just stand. If possible, look into the mirror, but not necessary. You can just stand comfortably with both your feet on the ground. And now you move your right leg up little bit, like
Mm.
little small step you take, and you say right leg. You just like give it the instruction, right leg, and move your right leg, and say left leg, and
Mm.
you activate your left leg like a small step, like how we used to do in the parade thing. So like a little right leg, left leg, and then you take your right hand's first two fingers, and you tap on your temple on the right side, and you say right leg, left leg, growth mode on, and you like a
Mm.
little button. You switch on that button on the right side of your temple, and it's a continuous movement. Right leg, left leg, growth mode on. Right leg, left leg, growth mode on. What we are telling ourselves? We're telling ourselves that I'm taking the first step where I'm going to have all these four things together. Now that I'm going to walk into a zone, which is like a game zone, war zone, whatever, like a zone where I'm going to actively ask myself to do something about accepting the situation. I'm going to consciously, in a way, it's uncomfortable, but ask myself to be more curious about at least three solutions to the problem. Now that I activate the growth mode, I'm going to also ask myself to decide what actions can I take right now about it. It's not only thinking. The shift, the growth, the mindset shift happens only when I act upon it. And
Mm.
that's a very, very important part of it. You might understand everything about it, it doesn't work. You got to act because your body
Mm.
has to mobilize certain things, your mind has to mobilize certain things. So, third thing is act on it. And the fourth one, if you are on a continuous growth journey, one thing I can guarantee you without knowing your journey is whatever you decide, you're going to fall, you're going to fail, you're going to go off your cycle, and you're just not gonna be where you're at right now, and that's
Yeah.
uncomfortable as hell. But the
Yeah.
point is, when I'm going through all of it, the fourth key is resilience, which means
Mm.
even if I fall, which is almost means that I almost expect that the journey, because it's uncomfortable, new, and something I've never done before, I prepare myself that there is a possibility of failing and falling, which if she
Yeah.
would have trained before, she would have known that, okay, there's always a possibility of resilience, of falling, failing. And if I fall, my job is to not resist, not blame, not is actually the job to get back up on the cycle as soon as possible.
Mm. Well,
But
you'll be really happy to know
yes,
that Amanda
uh-huh. She's on a
participated in
growth
the next
mode.
on the growth mode in just 2 weeks after Wimbledon, because then 2 to 3 weeks, I suppose, when the US Open started, which is another big Grand Slam tournament. And she was so determined that she probably reached like the deep ends of the tournament again. She wasn't docile,
Uh-huh.
and she beat Iga, who was world number 2, who beat her 6-0, 6-0. She beat her in the US Open.
Okay,
So
I want to say something here, okay? Something which I feel most of us miss, like, and especially sports people, I feel miss that big time. Now, we speak about like the result of 6-0, 6-0. We speak about who won this and number one, number two. Now, she went through all of this in 2 weeks. She came back and she kind of had the resilience to do it. Now, we believe that victory at any cost is good. Like that's how people
yeah,
look at games, as wars. And I feel your nervous system regulation is crucial. Like one of the
yeah,
things we love about Roger is like how effortless and how calm he is. Right?
yeah,
Everybody talks about it, and he's an anomaly that, in spite of being such a high-performing athlete, how can you be calm? How can nobody
yeah,
knows? Nobody knew before him that you can be all of this, or before Dhoni, you can be all of this and still have
that's
the
true.
composure. And that's why it is so appealing, and it is kind of so alluring for people, that calm people generally they expect them to like not have the game on, but these two people in our experience have the game on and
Yeah,
really play.
absolutely. Rogers trained
Yes.
for it.
No, but that training is what I want to address. So my favorite analogy for this is, imagine you and I see a person running.
Hmm.
We meet for coffee, we see a person running, and we wonder, why is he running suddenly in the middle of the day? So
Hmm.
I say probably there is a dog behind him. So we look carefully and say, oh, is there a dog? No, there is no dog. You say probably there's a kite in the sky that he wants to catch. So I say, yeah, possibly something that he desires, something that is exciting. Now he's running behind the kite. And we look for a kite, there is no kite. And while we are having this conversation, the server comes next to us and says, oh, ma'am, actually, he is our regular customer. He's preparing for a marathon.
Hmm.
Right? So he's practicing, he does it regularly. Now, just for our sake, the action that he took is the same in all three possibilities. From point A to point B, he ran. Like
Yeah.
in her case, you say Amanda, went back to the match and she won it. But the motive behind the action actually defines the mindset for life.
Yeah.
Okay,
In
if
this
she
case, it was revenge. Nobody doubted it.
but that's my point. If she did it from revenge, if she did it from fear, if she did it from embarrassment, then all that running and all that winning is layered with vengeance.
And which is why Aditi is so important, because then that win is not repeatable. You
Exactly
know,
my point.
because that revenge, the feeling of revenge is going to last that match.
And
But you
you
are
win
still going to
it.
be an elite athlete.
Yeah, but if you win it, you lost that motivation. If you
Yeah.
lose it, it might continue. But if you win that match, which she did, there is no
Yeah.
motivation like that would come again. So relying on fear
Yeah.
and debilitating emotions might give you a quick success, but that doesn't work. And people are like, okay, okay, okay. Then the kite analogy is
Very
much better.
important.
I might have like the kite that I
Yeah.
desire, where we began the conversation, that the desire is something that I must get into. Desire is something that would change. Yeah, in a way, but then again, when you win, what do? Then you have
Hmm.
no motivation to run again. And if you are only
Hmm.
desire based and if you lose it, then again you're back to vengeance and getting it again. So you just stay trapped until you're running because you're focused on running better and enhancing the skill and getting better at it and all of that. And I want to be like at a high speed, I want to build this, but I want to have my nervous system regulated.
Yeah.
Then you, like the marathon preparing runner, you would run because you love running, you'll enjoy the music, you would enjoy the shoes, you would choose the path where you're going to run, you're going to make the whole experience as a full experience. And
Yeah.
that's an essential part of my coaching process. There's not only result that somebody going to clap at, because why, what happened within, how were
Yeah.
you responding, and you know this, so nobody can
Yeah.
judge. If
Exactly.
you think you're doing great, okay, I would not argue. But if you know that there was fear that was driving you, and there was like only sheer desire that was driving you, and not the
Yeah.
act and craft and excellence, pursuit of excellence, then your achievement is good for others, but for you, you still have some work to do.
Yeah, I agree. And that leads me to your experience with the athletes that found you. Take me through. I know you can't reveal their names, etc., but take me through what are the kind of things that they were dealing with that they needed help from you for?
I feel with athletes, one of the things everybody can guess, but when you are in the trenches with them, you also realize it to the another level of severity or intensity is your identity is always
Yeah,
at stake.
yeah,
For example, as an engineer, you do something, and if you do a great project, okay, you're a better engineer. But if you do
yeah,
like you don't win or you don't do a good job, then you're still an engineer of certain stature, and
yeah,
go 20% up and down. But for
yeah.
athletes, every season it goes like 80% up or 80% down. So
Hmm.
what is at stake is everything. Your legacy is at stake. Like we
Yeah,
as people are very unforgiving.
yeah.
Like the other day, my friend was watching a match, the recent, uh, some final. I don't know. I wasn't watching, so I'm not aware. And she said, "Yeah, we won." I'm like, "Then aren't you RCB won?" I'm like, "Aren't you happy about it?" She said,
Hmm.
"No, it was not an interesting match." I'm like, "They're athletes. They're not supposed to entertain you." So like,
Yeah,
it wasn't fun. I'm like, "It is not a movie. If you want fun, go watch a movie." She's like, "Oh, you
yeah.
won't get it. You won't get it." She said, and we laughed
Hmm.
about it. But that's what our expectation is. Back in the day,
Yeah,
it was about winning. Now it's like you win, but also make sure that you give us an experience where we feel
yeah,
edge of the
yeah,
chair so that we like that's not what it is.
yeah.
So we are very unforgiving.
Hmm.
And because of that constant cancel culture, constant pressure of like being in that league and only that league, otherwise my existence is at stake. I feel that's the biggest. So when I coached people between two Olympic matches, I found that people had to really, really, really hold on to their identity. Because when you're not
Hmm.
playing the actual game, there is no way to reinforce identity.
Yeah,
Not to know, now am I doing good? Am I good enough or not? Because I'm just
yeah.
practicing, and practice doesn't mean anything to me until there is no result. And this is where your everyday micro high performing skill set building journey comes into picture.
Hmm.
I always tell people every 100 day you got to commit to something new, something that you haven't
Hmm.
done before, or something that you're currently chasing, learning, improving, enhancing. But 100 days you do that. For athletes,
Hmm.
sometimes that micro shift. Like I was reading Mentality, Kobe Bryant's book, and he talked
Yeah.
about like because his ankle was so much in pain all the time, every possible match, every day, every season it was about, is my ankle good enough? And literally,
Hmm.
his performance's upper limit was his ankle's health,
Yeah.
right? So when you have something like that happening, we all have upper limits, Shruti.
Hmm.
And our upper limits can be stretched. Our upper limit is as much as we can go, as much as we believe we can go, as much as we can move further. That is your upper limit. So, whatever
Yeah.
is your upper limit in this context, you got to identify, okay, I'm operating and this is as far as I can go. Now, what do I do to
Yeah.
push this upper limit little bit higher? And now I can hit this. And that's how exactly you build skill. Whatever is your skill
Hmm.
set in the area right now, you're like, can I build it up? Then can I build it?
Hmm.
Can I build it up? Now we are trying to go up and up and up because that's what we want, more control, more ease, and more comfort over it. But if you
Hmm.
define that journey by defining new upper limits, then everything becomes meaningless.
Hmm. Is that what most of them were struggling with? The ones that came to you?
Yes, identity-based work is an essential part with most of the either two types of people I have worked with. So people who are in the game, this was like the very, very important part of it. One. Second part is one area that is your weakness, the amount of fear and constant like limitation that people carry over that shouldn't happen. Like it's almost like exam in the exam that one question shouldn't come. Everything else है, वो एक सवाल नहीं
Yeah.
आना चाहिए, वो एक topic नहीं आना चाहिए. I shouldn't be played or challenged in that one area which I know is my weakness. And because especially with
Yeah.
like reactive sports, you don't have a choice to choose your style. Whatever happens, you react to it. So that's a big, big fear, and like playing in spite of that, around it becomes a mental mindset training. The other part of
Hmm.
other type of people I have coached are people who just retired, not
Hmm. The
necessarily.
most difficult phase.
Oh my God, not necessarily at the end of their whole journey, Like one athlete, she retired when she was 22.
Oh, wow.
And she had done like the whole young athlete. Everybody was waiting for her to get it. And she's like, oh my God, oh my God. She's like, no, I'm done. And people are like, how can you be done now? Like now, so you start. And she's like, no, I'm done. And now, like that decision was hers. But when she met me after like having done all the paperwork and having made the decision, now how do you find your way back? When the whole world
Yeah,
almost is telling you that your decision might not be the right one. You also don't know whether it's the right one. You also don't know
yeah,
whether you should have, but then you still have this very clear moment in your heart that you're done for real.
yeah,
Now you can't carry on because you don't have the same emotion triggered, right? So
yeah.
that was like one very interesting journey I took. One of them was with a double Olympian who got retired and as was trying to get into a newer life of
Hmm.
like corporate career and like career, found it so difficult to just deal with mediocrity of people who are not athletes and not into competitive. So she's like, what is this? Why everybody's so mediocre? Why they're not getting it? And that was like a biggest struggle. She's like, you give me anything. I'll put my 100%. That's how her training was. So for her,
Yeah,
just be okay with people saying yes and not showing up and not doing the work, saying yes but don't not necessarily doing 100%, saying yes but being tentative. She didn't understand it, so it was very very frustrating, and I was like, that's a
and so it's really fun to hear that,
good.
because I was speaking to our common friend Vishal,
Uh-huh.
and he told me an interesting story about meeting Rahul Dravid.
Okay.
Okay. And when he met Rahul Dravid much after he had retired, Rahul Dravid expressed an interest and said that I really want to study something. I have not had time to do that. Something like an executive MBA. It could even be a certificate course somewhere, internationally. And then he himself went on to say to Vishal, but I fear that I'll join this course and there'll be so many people who know so many things in the class and I will not know a thing, because other than cricket मुझे कुछ नहीं आता.
See,
तो वो मुझे लेंगे क्यों?
but that is still fine.
No,
The
but interestingly, if you look at the kind of people that admit, or create design MBA classes, for example, someone like Rahul Dravid would be the first one they'd sign up. But that just shows that you've been at it for so long that you've not had the time to take a step back and see actually what you have gained. What are your skill sets? Why is, someone like Rahul Dravid, you we feel really surprised that he thinks that he's not fit in that class, whereas someone like us who knows more about MBA classes, etc., just know that he's such a right fit. But then he also went on to tell Vishal that because I fear that I would not be that great, etc., I don't know if I'm going to take that step. But he was so enthusiastic and so willing to learn that he then started going to Vishal's office, at attending meetings with them, because he was so curious to learn something new.
That's so sweet. That's my favorite part of coaching high performers. You beat CXOs of large companies, managing directors, and sometimes they are like 60, 62, and I'm 40. So I've been doing it for 23 years. So when I started coaching these 45, 50, 60-year-old people, I was 23. The willingness
Hmm.
to learn, the willingness.
Yes.
I'm so inspired by athletes, actors, artists, whomever I coach. Like sometimes people, you also mentioned in your introduction, or generally my friends would say, Aditi, how many things are you learning? Like
Yeah.
I'm currently studying acting and performance design in Berlin. I was
Hmm.
before that I was studying with another artist to learn how to find my unique voice as an artist. Before that I was learning writing. I'm constantly breaking the mold, but if you really see my world and the people I hang as clients, their humility levels are so high. The willingness to
Hmm.
learn and change is so high, Shruti. The vulnerability to accept that I have a problem and can you help me is so high that I cannot, even in my wildest dream, and I cannot switch that part off anymore because I just had the privilege of working with all these people who are celebrated by the world but are humble to the T. So I'm not surprised with Rahul saying that, oh my God, like I don't know what to do. I would like to learn. Will they? And that's not self-doubt. It's a genuine self-assessment where that's true.
I agree.
He only knows how to play, and other elements, other skills are like not there. But for him to accept that, instead of having the ego to just say, but I'm Rahul Dravid, I can, get any. He also knows he would get admitted. His question was, will I be good enough? Will I be like at level at everyone else? That I feel it comes from the genuine self-awareness.
And that's why he's the right candidate to continue learning, right? And hence he will do well at whatever he sets his mind to. And that's something I see as well. Like, everything we're discussing right now goes beyond sport as well, right? And I have seen it. For example, I started working in a company. I started my career where, apart from me and three or four others, everybody was recruited from the IITs. Now, you don't prepare to suddenly start your career with everybody around you coming from IIT. And when I mean IIT, it's
Kareem,
the kind of hustle culture and intelligence and the will to put in the work, etc., that now you are asked to match. Somehow you found yourself here. You probably were good enough to be recruited, but now I had to spend 8 years in that culture, surviving that level of competitive environment. And that is there is no way you can survive these environments unless you both have a sport mentality where you're like, I have to do this, I have to put myself to it, it's a competition. But also be humble and say that, hey, or you also come to a point where you understand that they came from a different culture, the culture that allowed them to enter IIT. But while I am able to go toe to toe with them, I also have other skill sets because I come from a different setup. And I have to also be able to identify that that's what I bring to the table. So being in that setup, if you are not self-aware, then you'll be burnt out in no time, because there is no competing with excellence. I mean, think about it. The year-end reviews were between one IITian to another IITian, etc., etc. Anybody who got the lowest review was also an IITian.
Where?
Right.
And I feel unknowingly, knowingly, if I have to put what you just said into the growth mode on model, at some point, instead of feeling intimidated by this environment, you accepted that as your game,
Yeah.
right? You said, okay, I'm not an IITian, I'm not doing all of these things that they have done, but let me be curious and ask myself, then what else am I bringing to the table? And can I
Yeah.
hold my ground on what I have that probably they do not have? Okay, instead
Yeah.
of competing them on things that I cannot win, can I just like, and that requires tremendous amount of curiosity and honest self-evaluation, which you did at some point, knowingly or unknowingly without having. And then it's not enough because you have to act upon it. Sometimes when
Yeah.
they would throw you under the bus or probably have an attitude because they're better at something, you also have to act upon creating the credibility or showing authority, or
Yeah.
if you feel knocked down, then have the action of getting back up and still being in the game. Now all of that with resilience, because I'm sure you would have had many moments of embarrassment with, oops,
Yeah.
I don't know, all of that, and you did not give in to this, and you had the
Yeah.
resilience like an athlete to go back and constantly be part of that whole conversation. Now
Yeah.
that showing up into the game, and it did not be a game of an athlete, it could be any other game, but having the
Yeah.
resilience to do all of it is what we are talking about.
Yeah, and also, this is also a metaphor for what athletes face, right? What is a competitive high performance environment? Because my experience has been that it is very addictive. This sort of environment is very addictive.
Yes.
Once you are, I might tell you right now about how competitive it was, and how much effort you have to put, etc., etc. There comes a point where you don't know how to function anywhere else. Anywhere else, if you take yourself out of that environment, you basically feel that everything else is mediocre, or
Or
that
you have
you're
to build
intellectually
environments.
decomposing,
Or you have to build environments which constantly keep you on the edge.
keep you challenged. Yeah. So that actually also, it's a boon and a bane, I suppose. But the athletes also face this, that the kind of competition means that you, when you retire, perhaps you just struggle because you have, you have that competition level has kept you going. It's constantly given you purpose. Now if survival or everyday life seems slightly easier, or it seems a little wayward, you feel like, I have to put myself into another challenge. Let me learn another sport. Let
You
me do something
may,
else.
you may, and this is where I want to, because I know many athletes and people associated with sports listen to your podcast. I want to request everybody, especially when you're focused on one area, pick up something which is non-competitive as your hobby.
Hmm.
Because that level of, and that is your nervous system regulation routine. This is
Yeah, so
learn
important.
something like, which is completely unrelated, like singing, like
Yeah.
knitting. I know some swimmers who are like great knitters, and this guy would like talk about knitting all the time, and crochet he would do, and he has an account which is only for crochet. I know one
Wow.
athlete who is into ice skating, and she
Hmm.
fell, and she had like this huge uh, injury, and she played and she won in spite of that and all of this. uh, and her coach before and during training made her build a home from
Hmm.
scratch. And the whole idea, why would you do this and how would you survive this? Because your identity is not based only on sports.
Yeah.
It is not necessarily whether you are, in national, international teams, but when your identity becomes, even I tell this to CXOs, if your identity becomes only about that, the very moment you fail at it or it gets over, it's very, very difficult. Like I am making a very generic, gender-based
No, I
approach.
have lived through this. I am completely identifying with this because if,
I'm making
you
an
know,
observation here that I find
yeah,
many men after retirement don't know what to do, and they
yeah.
immediately get into depression or immediately start feeling life meaningless, and they create health problems. Whereas women, because they are constantly having multiple roles along with their profession, they do not feel as burnt out after, or
Hmm.
as empty after their retirement, because they switch from one role to the other which more seamlessly, because they always had multiple roles. But men have very restrictive definition, especially the recognition and love
Hmm.
and respect come from the work and being a provider,
Hmm.
so that identity is stolen from them. They have no other parallel
Yeah.
identity to fall back on. So
Yeah,
please
but
start.
it's a general pitfall. It's a general pitfall that men and women fall into, even if the percentages might
Yeah, agree.
lean onto the side of the women, because you so often one has to learn how to define identity, right? And Indian culture doesn't allow us to do that. If I studied engineering, then you are already told that if you get into these three or four companies, then
Good enough.
you've achieved,
Yes.
that you've achieved it. And then you feel that when you get into that company, you feel like that is my identity. Let's say a Google, a Facebook, an Amazon, whatever is the most aspirational for engineers. And then one day you decide to leave it, and then you feel like, if I'm not working for Google, if I'm not working for Facebook, who am I?
But these are the identity traps which I've been talking. Like Shruti, that's why when you told me that you took consciously left a very well paying, very settling job to start a business back in the day, this is commendable beyond belief. And people think, yeah, there are many people do it. No, 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 it's not about that. It's about how you're built up and how you thought that is the ultimate success. And when you're there, most people just keep convincing themselves, now I have come this far, it's okay. Now all of this is okay. Like, and how many
Hmm.
people in your organizations really leave the job from your stature to actually start?
Very hard, very few.
Yeah, because we just get married to these identities, and then we cannot. And identities help and they work also. Like, I remember
Yeah,
when I
they do.
started very early, I had to step into an identity of an authoritative coach. The authority that
Hmm.
probably I did not have then, but I just had the knowledge and instinct of
Hmm.
it. But I had to step into something. At 26,
Hmm.
I had to take a sabbatical, because from 19 to 26 that I worked as a coach and worked with all these senior people. I like touch wood, I got like success early in my profession. But in that period, when I was working with all these people, I started behaving like a coach that they wanted me to behave. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I am stepping into a role, like into like a
Hmm.
like a avatar that I'm not. And it
Hmm.
became too much because our identity became so solid and so well
Hmm.
defined that it just became very far away from who I was. So in my
Right.
sabbatical, I really, really had to break it down to say, but who am I? Who am I? Who am I? And create a parallel identity. And now you can switch between a few,
Yeah. Yeah.
which
No,
I
I,
wish
I, I
everybody
think
actually
that.
must do.
I mean, I urge everybody to sort of, write down what they think is their identity. And if they think that this identity is dependent on something that is transitional, then it's time to think deeper, go that one level deeper on who you are, because it's not an overnight journey, as somebody who's on that journey actually, but has also gone a few steps further.
And you'll be
I think
surprised.
that's an important.
You'll be surprised that everything that you do, everything that you are like, you think that sports is fulfilling for me, like that activity of sports fulfills many aspects that you desire as a person. Now the same aspects can be fulfilled by other things which people never
Hmm.
imagine. Like people always
Hmm.
used to tell me big in like many years ago, when global travel was not a very common thing. So people say one day
Hmm.
I want to like travel the world. And then I would ask them, then what would happen if you travel the world? What
Hmm.
aspects would you fulfill? They're like, I'll go
Yeah.
to a place I've never been to, and then I will like
Hmm.
meet people I've never met, and then I will like, explore things that are new, and then I would be in situations which are uncertain, then I will figure it out. And I'm like, can you do all of this in your city where you live pretty much
Hmm.
every month once? And they're like, what? I'm like, have you gone to those unexplored parts of your city? Have you gone to in those cultural hubs of your city? Have you gone and like, participated in workshops that make you feel uncomfortable? They're like, no. I'm like, why would you not
Hmm.
feel all these aspects right away? So that you don't have to
Yeah.
wait for like one vacation or one travel plan. Similarly, the aspects that you're fulfilling today with your sport, which could be competitive edge, which could be like a pursuit of excellence, which could be being obsessed with what you believe in and then getting to a level where you command something that you can't do today. Can you just practice those aspects in some other areas of your life? Because those aspects
Yeah.
can be fulfilled in many many ways. Like sometimes you wake up and you're like, आज बड़ा खट्टा खाने का मन कर I want to eat something, spicy or sweet or whatever. But then when you have that feeling, then many options can open. But if you say I
Hmm.
want to only eat the sweet from this restaurant and this particular one, if the restaurant is closed, you can't do anything.
Yeah.
But if you know the flavor that you're going for, you can think of alternate options and you can find many, many ways in which you can be fulfilled, which I feel is very important.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask you a little bit of a counterintuitive question to growth mindset, okay? Which is that how long does one chase growth, okay,
Very nice.
when reality is in front of you? Like, let me give you an example. Have you watched the movie Disciple? Chaitanya Tamane's movie Disciple.
No, I haven't.
So this movie is about a couple of singers, classical singers. And there is one guy who has been going to a teacher for a very long time, and he's really committed, and he spent his entire life learning from this teacher, etc., etc. And increasingly through this movie, he is getting sort of disappointed because the coach, I mean, he's also coming across other singers, right? And some of them don't seem to be as serious as him, but they have a gift. Okay, so they're working as well, but they have a gift, and he can see his teacher's eyes light up when he sees some of these singers sing, and he wants that for himself. He's putting in the work, but he doesn't have the gift that they do. Okay, and so he's a great disciple, but he's not going to get that level of admiration, and so his journey is just continuing being this disciple and increasingly growing disappointed, like a artist's heart dying. That's how that movie slowly progresses. And that's where I wanted to ask that question, that where do you just say that, hey, I've given it everything, but there are things that are not in my control. There is a certain, like, somebody is great at maths. Okay, I once dated a guy who was great at mathematics. He used to read the mathematics book one night before, And he used to be half asleep on the bed. The book would be half falling out of his hand, and we'd all be there on the desks trying to solve problems and etc etc. Next day he'd go get 95 and 98 and 99. He was just like a math whiz. So what do you do when you come across that situation?
Before I go and explore this and talk about it, I want to talk about being gifted. Okay. According to Carol Dweck, when somebody is gifted with a particular talent, she believes that that makes you fixed minded because you believe
Hmm.
that you are given a certain gift or capacity. Now, when these people start on their journey, suddenly they have this gift. Okay, and now
Yeah.
everybody like, oh my God, like how is it happening? And now,
Yeah.
because they don't know how they created it, they cannot reproduce
Hmm.
it. And now, but they're
Hmm.
this already high. Okay, they tweak it a little bit and they go to even higher. But they always remain insecure because they don't know how to create it from the scratch. And if tomorrow
Hmm.
if it disappears, they don't know how to recreate anything in that area. So thereby, gifted people generally have a fixed mindset where they want opportunities to match their capacity because they don't know how
Hmm.
to build the capacity or stretch the capacity if they're not trained. And we also know some
Hmm.
people who are gifted and they're in growth mindset or growth mode and they constantly build it and break it and lose it and
Hmm.
get it back, all of that. That requires a lot of courage. Now, coming to your question, which I think was brilliant. I'm loving being on this podcast because all the questions are so interesting. So, when you are, I always believe that there is a limit which I know I can sustain. And this is a very weird way and very intangible way of saying, but let's look at it. We all feel overwhelmed where either we lack skill set or mindset. So I always say
Hmm.
overwhelm is your upper limit. We go as far as we can handle the overwhelm. If it goes beyond, we get burnt out. If we are not doing anything that overwhelms us, then we are actually operating from our comfort zone. So your overwhelm is a very
Hmm.
telling area, is a very important area that tells you, am I constantly challenging my skill set or my skill set or my mindset? If any one of them becomes zero, everything is zero. I always
Hmm.
take a skill set into mindset. If skill set becomes zero,
Hmm.
everything is zero. Mindset becomes zero, everything is zero. Then you just don't go. You just like collapse there. And people have this, fear of collapsing. I always
Hmm.
tell people how far can you go? How many times can you attempt? Depends on how well do you handle your overwhelm.
Hmm.
Right? If you can sustain the overwhelm, you can continue learning for many, 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 many times. But if your mindset goes against you and starts questioning
Hmm.
everything and start like pushing you down the rabbit hole, then you would not be able to continue.
Hmm.
Right? Even you have great
Right.
skill set, your mind turning against you is not like I would not say any growth is easy or fun or positive all the time because it's not, and you have to go through a lot of discomfort, but there is joy in dealing with that discomfort. It's like a good workout. It
Right.
kills you, but it's
Hmm.
also like a good fun to do that. So the very moment
Yeah.
it becomes painful where you can't take it and it becomes overwhelming over and over again, then you should give yourself some timeline. Okay?
Right.
If you're
Oh, that's a
constantly
great
building
way of looking at it.
But if you're constantly building your skill set slowly, steadily, then also your ability to take the pressure increases. I believe
Hmm.
the joy of action is a very, very important thing. Like next month, I'm launching a video module in July, which is called What Are You Waiting For? It's a 2.5 hour of video module, and people would go through different aspects of growth mode because mostly we are waiting for something to change and we don't act upon it.
Yeah.
But the whole module culminates on this topic, which rarely people talk about. It's called joy of action.
Beautiful.
That's such an important thing. If I don't feel excited to go for the practice every day, if I don't feel some excitement to learn something new, which is very nuanced, something that I have never done before, if there is no excitement, then it's a drag. And how far can you
Hmm.
carry the drag? You you would
Hmm.
stop on that whole process. You're like, okay, I did and then you start building victim stories. I couldn't do it because of this, and I couldn't do it because of that, and like at the end, it's all about you and you.
Hmm.
It's between you and you. So if you understand, that's the main primary relationship. If you give excuses, okay. If you don't give, it's just you have to be honest about how far can I be okay with discomfort.
Yeah.
Overwhelm.
And that explains, I often think that when I'm watching sport, there are many athletes who will just lose in round one or round two. At max, their best is round three. In tennis, round one, two, three, four, and then quarterfinals, etc. And the same for other sports. And I often think that, there are just some athletes whose personal best is a third round, whose personal best is a second round. It's not even quarterfinals.
I would
And
say
their entire career is just that. They've gone on to live a career where they've attempted and attempted and attempted, and their best has just been a third round or a second round or whatever. And of course, every round pays you. So it's like a career as well. You're earning money, and then at some point you retire. And I have often wondered, how do they motivate themselves? And from what you just said, I realized that it is the joy of action, because every time they are out at in a second round or whatever, they must be going back and then thinking, what else can I do? Can I do something differently for the next time? And so you have motivation to go to the next tournament, and try that new thing that you've been trying, a new service, a new shot, a new racket maybe. And then, that's and before you know, your career's over, but at least you spent it in joy of action.
Shruti, I was in a temple in South India, and that moment, what I'm going to describe, just changed my life. Especially being a high performer, constantly talking about results and efficiency and productivity and all of that. There's this woman I met. She was in her 70s, old woman, okay. And the villagers told me that for the last 25 years, from the time she had some personal challenges, every evening she comes and does the floral arrangement of that temple.
Hmm.
I happened to be there, okay? And I was looking at her, every flower that she kept, every flower, and like a long staircase that she was decorating. And she would come at 4 o'clock till 6 o'clock. She would do her thing, and then 7 o'clock aarti, and then everybody would disperse. But every flower that she was keeping, it felt as if Bhagwan khud aake samne khade hai, and she's putting the flower on there at the feet at the god, like it is literally
Hmm.
like at the feet. And I was like looking at her, I'm like, she's doing it for hours. She's doing it for 25 years. She just changed my idea of how one can be devoted into a simple action without thinking
Hmm.
about the result, the outcome, the design, the appreciation, the validation, and other people clapping for you. Just you do it because doing the thing that is complete in itself. I want to be
So,
devotional every time I'm on the yoga mat, every time I pick up my pen to do my painting or drawing, and every line that I draw. I want to do it in every sentence that comes out of my mouth. I want to do it when I cook and I'm trying to get that recipe right. It doesn't matter what you do. It's a
yeah.
mindset that becomes like a filter through which I'm like, was I involved enough or not? Was I present enough or not? Was I enjoyably engaging in this activity or not? When that becomes
Yeah.
my lens, it does not matter what you do.
But
Every
we lack that. We lack those questions in our everyday life.
we
Many
lack
people will
questions to
not.
begin with. People don't reflect on anything. Like
Yeah.
we don't have room. Like there is this need every time I have a problem. Now with AI, it's going to be even faster. I'm like, I have a problem, let me find an answer. But what happened to the
Hmm.
problem? And then in Sanskrit, we call it Pathan, Manan, Chintan. Pathan is you
Yeah.
read something, then Manan is you internally you thought about it. Chintan is where you just like sat with it and let it go to Chittan, go to like a deeper level of your own consciousness. We don't have those stages available. We
Yeah.
just have a problem solution, problem solution. I want something, I call it on Swiggy. I want something, I call it like everything is so instant, and which is not bad. I love it. Absolutely. I think it makes our life easy. But in thinking, to be able to find my perspective, I need to sit with thoughts and problem and challenges, and I need to take them to my mind palace and ponder upon it. So reflection is not only about I'm reflecting on things. Reflection allows me to know who I am. And people don't
Fully,
have the
fully agree.
poise and pause to be able to do that. And I think that's a part of, and that's why we are burning out more. And that's why, like, it's not an activity and how much pressure you take. It's about we are doing haphazard, too many things job. Our minds are not designed for it. If you take anything, any project, any work that you do, but you're fully engaging with it, And if it allows your mind and your body to calm down and be so focused, like an archer just before like that shot, or any other player, that requires that level of presence in the moment and concentration.
Mm.
If we can train our minds to do that in anything and everything, it's difficult. It's impossible to be burnt out. That's my claim. You can't be burnt out by
Yeah.
doing 16 hours of work if you are doing these micro, deep diving moments, deep work moments full day.
Yeah. And I have a few other last questions for you.
Yes.
One is look at, I've played sport, let's say at the national level, clearly not anywhere close to, so many athletes out there every day. But I've been around long enough to have experienced some magical moments.
Okay.
Okay. And one of that magical moment is when you have a few minutes in a match where you have achieved a flow state.
Yes.
Okay. You may be playing an opponent who's better than you, but in that moment, in those 5 or 10 minutes, you feel like, man, I am so zoned in right now.
Mhm.
Nothing can go wrong. In my case, I was a volleyball player, but in that moment, you feel that, okay, kaisa bhi smash aane do, I am going to defend it. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
That's a flow state. I'm sure tennis players have that where the ball is hitting this exactly at the center of the racket, no matter what. And obviously, we know that it is so rare that it is not going to last the entire match. Okay. But once the match is over and once you've experienced that flow state, the obvious question is how can I bring it back? How can I summon it when I want? Can I extend it when it comes?
This is my
So, do
favorite
you have any
topic.
magic tricks?
This is my favorite topic to talk about and research and identify, because there's this whole neuroscience based research that when people, an athlete more often than others, get into a flow state, they have this unbelievable, uncanny capacity available to them that in that
Yeah.
moment they know more, they're more aware, they're more intuitive, they're more connected to all other players. So I started researching flow state many years ago, and I've also like trained people to step in and step out of flow states. And I what I mean is, uh, I believe uh, flow can be induced by many, 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 many things. Like Mihai
Hmm.
Csikszentmihalyi talks about it in a manner that people have a few areas where it happens. And that's also true. But in my research, I also experimented with other people, groups of people over a period of time. And I found flow can be induced if you create conditions. And he gives you like 10, 15 principles of inducing conditions for flow. One of them is, can you bring yourself to function at a level of challenge and skill set which is beyond, little bit beyond your capacity. If it is too much, then you'll be
Hmm.
burnt out. If skills are, you don't have the skills, then you can't play that game. You will be anxious. So he has this whole chart, but he talks about a point, a zone where your skill set are challenged a bit and the challenge levels are slightly higher than what you can manage, where you have to stretch yourself beyond in a manner that you're still in control. That is a
Hmm.
flow state. Now you felt that in all the
Hmm.
matches where you felt flow, right? You were challenged a bit more than normal,
Yeah.
but also your skill
Yeah.
set was stretched enough to be able to catch that moment. Now,
Yeah.
I train, which I also feel like many times high intensity workouts do to you. They bring you to a point where you're like, "Isse aage nahi ja payenge," and then you do one more rep, and then you do.
Hmm.
Similarly, for your mind, if you kind of create conditions where you take your mind there and you keep playing it, then the flow becomes possible. Now, how do you do it? For me, every now and then I learn something that I'm horrible at. Okay,
Hmm.
where your skill set is very low. Then you, every time you have to build your skill set and challenge yourself a little bit more, and build your skill set and challenge your. Like for example, I'm dyslexic. So for me, writing and speaking grammatically correct regularly was a big challenge. Speaking to groups was a big challenge. Now I created a career around one-on-one coaching, where people had to
Yeah.
convince that I'm good, and then I would like talk to them over a period of time, so they accept my flaws, and they, if I don't get it, then I can correct, because it's one person, and once I explain to them that I'm dyslexic, they're with me and nobody judges me. So I created these safe environments. But at one point in my career, I realized that I got to speak publicly, or I got to be a podcaster, or I got to be a content creator, or I want to write, and like I want to write newsletters, whatever. Now I started training for skills and kept failing, kept failing. So I remember the days when I started podcasting, I could talk to people still, because one-on-one interviews like this, still fine. Then they said, Aditi, you have to read 1 minute of intro and you have to do it like an introduction that we can cut and make
Mm.
a promo out of it. I took 4 hours in the studio. 4 hours, and it was I
Mm.
still remember the ACs were blasting at 16, and I was sweating, Shruti. I'm just talking about 2019, not even like far.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I
Yeah.
cannot read that one thing. So ever since I got a writing coach, speaking coach, I train in acting and performance. Where all of these things just allow your body and your mind to just be okay. So every time you
Mm.
reach a point where your skill set and your mindset and your challenges, like all of that combination, so that you find comfort and you get into flow. And the very moment you realize you're kind of getting there, you challenge further, you challenge further. Today, when I look back in the last 7 years of the pursuit of, that day when I was sweating in the studios and I was struggling to make that 1 minute promo, I promised myself never again.
Mm.
Today, after 7 years, when I look back on that moment, like I have been like a video content creator regularly. The podcast became award winning. I write a lot, to a point that I have written a show which is called Alag is Not Galat. I just offered a book deal that I'm still yet to sign, but all of that has happened. But like I feel like today when I look back on that 7 year back, Aditi, it was very difficult in that moment. It almost looked impossible. Where I felt
And
like
it's so inspiring, and it's great to hear somebody say that everything you say today is lots of hard work, apart from your day-to-day job, because we live in such a fast world that people see success and don't see all the work behind it, And now that you've mentioned Alag is Not Galat, that was my next question. So tell me about this new show. And it's so wonderful that we've been talking also about how you've made something that the world told you was your weakness into a career.
yeah.
And then through that career, you have met so many people who've come to you for help. And now you're in a position where you're writing about it. So
Yes.
exciting. Tell me about that.
So this is okay. It started with like a 1,000 day project. 3 years ago, I just how I believe, as I said, I believe in challenging myself. So I just challenged myself because a friend said, "Would you come and tell a story in a spoken word open mic event?" I'm like, okay, and then I just said yes before knowing how I'm gonna do it, because I knew I can't do it, but I said कुछ कुछ ना कुछ तो लिख ही लूंगी मैं, and I'll challenge myself there. And in the process, I landed up writing a piece that just worked. And that was a story about, it's a very personal story I shared, and people loved it and they cried and they absolutely connected with it. I was like, what just happened here? Like I have never expected this to happen. Then many people told me, and I performed it multiple places. Many people would come and tell me, Aditi, you must consider acting, you must consider writing. And I'm like, of course, two things that I absolutely don't want to do in my life. But then when many people said that, I'm like, probably let me just test myself. So out of experimenting, again going back to growth mode on, I just went for a short class in Bombay, and I realized I like it. And so the
Mm.
teacher sat me down and said, Aditi, you must try, you're good at it. I'm like, Again took feedback, and then I took a 1,000 day project where I said, what if I take stories from coaching world and narrate them like a professional storyteller? Beyond my ability to do it. And I'm like, what if I enact the characters, because I meet these people and they're fascinating and they're broken and they're imperfect and I love them. And I feel I'm part of their stories and they're part of mine. So I wanted to write about it. So Alag is Not Galat comes from this space where when you do not fit into the world, which most of the people who are listening to this podcast won't, we just kind of either get resentful or we comply and become part of the world. And Alag is Not Galat is my personal journey as a dyslexic person, and as like personal challenges that I've had with people. I feel I want people to a world to be a better place where people can accept these parts. So Alag is Not
Yeah.
Galat is a 75-minute storytelling show, and the first one I would open on 18th of July in Bombay. So if you're in Bombay, please come. I would love to have you as a part of the conversation, because it is about like the transformational story that changed my life, and this is exactly about the whole journey takes you through. areas where we got to look at things that we miss talking about, reflecting upon. That's my larger idea.
Amazing. And to all our listeners, I have had the privilege to hear Aditi's story and see her perform this piece, and it's very moving. It'll leave you with a lot of hope, actually, and readiness for what Aditi told us earlier in the podcast today, to accept everything that you are dealing with,
Yeah.
and look at life in a way where, once that acceptance comes, maybe there is light at the end of the tunnel.
I feel
So
after
awesome.
acceptance, if you're willing to play the game, there's always a light. And if not, we will make the light happen. If it is not easy, find a way. I believe
Yeah,
if you know the f- I like this line, like we haven't come this far just to come this far,
yeah.
right? You have gone through so much to be here in this moment. So if you have gone through all of this, let's make the most of it and go to a point where we want to go. And I find that thought so inspiring. Like I believe one of the things I've learned and practiced over and over again is, like, no matter how tough things become, I won't give up on myself. I might choose the
Hmm.
area of expertise. I might choose to change the area of expertise. I might choose to change the game that I'm playing. I would choose to change anything and everything, but I won't give up on myself.
Hmm.
So to answer the question, that was brilliant. When you say how far do you stretch, leave things is fine, but don't give up on yourself.
Hmm.
Try something else and try something else and try something else. That's the beauty of the journey that we are building, because we are powerful and we are capable, and I believe that that is our pursuit, to be able to do justice to what gifts we are born with.
Yeah. And I couldn't, have found a better way to end today's conversation. And, taking it back to the one line that is going to stay with me, and I'm going to maybe paste it on a wall in my house, which is taking joy in action.
Yes.
Uh, and
Yes, but
that's
imagine, but Shruti, imagine the world. This is my imagination about the world. Imagine everybody we come across, people who are serving coffee, selling vegetables, people love doing what they do. Okay, they find
mm,
joy in the action. It's not the result, is not the competition, which is anti in a way the sports thing, but it is not, as I explained the whole. But imagine everybody is looking forward to making that a little bit more interesting. How amazing the
yeah,
world would be.
yeah.
I feel that's the vision of the world I live by. I'm like, I want to contribute to the world where everybody find it interesting. They own their imperfections. They're not judging themselves. That they show up and say, okay, no matter I'm broken or not, imperfect or not, I'm gonna try a little bit more. I'm gonna do something a little bit better. Yeah, that's fun. Oh, don't get me started on this. I'll speak for 1.5 hours on this.
Absolutely. And your words are going to stay with me for longer than the podcast. Aditi, thank you. Thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. And, I wish you all the best for the
Thank
first
you.
show on July 18th. And thank you to our listeners as well for joining both of us today.
Thank
We
you.
hope that you take back so many tools that Aditi was gracious enough to share with us today. Thank you.
Also, Shruti, I want to say that being on this podcast, I get to know you in a different light. So it's just a wonderful thing. Like, we know each other for a short duration, but we've come to become like great friends. But this conversation, I discovered a new Shruti side. So I'm very, very happy to
And
be here.
like you
And
said,
thank you
we're
very
all performing.
much.
Thank you.